Hey, this is Julissa.
And this is Alexis, and this is If You Didn't Know,
Well, now you know. So, on today's episode, I'll be telling you about a dry drowning incident that happened in Texas with a toddler named Frankie.
Dry drowning?
So, dry drowning is when a swimmer drowns out of the water. So they basically had an incident where they were in the water and they inhaled or drank some water and didn't notice that there was anything wrong happening until about 24 hours later, where a swimmer will inevitably pass away, sadly.
And this was a little boy named Frankie. This is what happened to him?
Yes. So 4-year-old Frankie from Texas went swimming on Memorial Day weekend with his family, and after a boat passed by quickly and made some waves, he was knocked over and he went underwater. Luckily, a family friend picked him up really quickly and he was perfectly fine. And they never thought anything of it. However, the next night, Frankie began to vomit and have diarrhea, and so Frankie's parents took him to the doctor, and the doctor simply said it was a stomach bug and that they could go ahead and take Frankie home and treat him at home with whatever medications they had given them.
Wow. So do you think that parents maybe didn't tell them that happened, or maybe because it happened so fast they didn't think to put it together?
I just think that Frankie was totally fine. There was no symptoms. They didn't think anything of it. Well, vomiting and diarrhea was there, but the kid was also in the sun all day.
Right.
He was tired. He was probably tired. So I think that these first two symptoms didn't really raise a red flag to think my child is drowning, because you don't really
land.
Exactly. You don't really associate drowning outside of water.
Okay.
Or later in the week, Frankie began to have some shoulder pain, and he just complained about muscle tiredness and fatigue. And so his parents again took him to the doctor, but they were sent right back home with some more medications. However, later that night, Frankie was sleeping next to his dad, and his dad will tell the story about how he woke up in the middle of the night, and so Frankie's dad woke up right with him. So the dad says, quote, "I was like, Frankie, what's wrong? And I got up real quick and I saw that he took a breath but never exhaled," end quote.
Oh my gosh.
Heartbreaking. So Frankie was rushed to the hospital, but after hours of, medical staff trying to resuscitate him, their efforts inevitably failed and he was pronounced dead. And so the doctors actually mentioned that they found water in his lungs and around his heart. And they let the parents know that this is dry drowning, or it is also known as secondary drowning.
So what should one look for when stuff like that happens? Like, did they mention anything about other things that parents can look out for? What are the things that someone should look out for?
So dry drowning is most common in young children, so parents should definitely be in the lookout if your child is ever in the water. It is difficult to predict whether a child is going to be affected unless they were obviously struggling in the water, but some symptoms that the parents can look out for is persistent coughing, shortness of breath, chest pain, lethargy, fever, and unusual mood swings. So a parent should definitely take their kid to a doctor if they've been swimming and maybe were submerged underwater, and if the following symptoms seem to stack up. So the first one is fatigue. And I know that we might not think a lot about fatigue simply because when kids are in the water, they're usually tired afterwards. They did a lot of exercise, but when they're combined with symptoms like vomiting and coughing, those should definitely raise a red flag. And lastly, like the biggest symptom, the biggest red flag that a child could have for dry drowning is fast breathing. So children who've gone underwater during drowning may develop fast breathing immediately after or several hours later. So those are definitely a few symptoms to look out for if your kid has been swimming.
And submerged underwater, like a clear struggle underwater.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for that story, Jaleesa. And this was If You Don't Know,
Well, now you know.